Hello everyone, this is Historathon 2024 Q3 wrap-up that focuses on this book, which has been the main book that I've been reading for Q3, Europe 1517 to 1648 by Professor Mark Greengrass, which is part of the Penguin History of Europe series. So what to say about this one? Where to start? Well, one place is at the back, where there is this little bit, this little paragraph at the beginning of the further reading, because Vin, in his recent video, did point out, I think it was a Cawthorne book about witches, that said something about how, oh dear, where are all the sources? There's no footnotes, there's no endnotes, there's no reference to sources in the text. There's only a further reading thing that doesn't appear to be very useful. So I'm looking at this book and it has the same thing. So oh dear, yeah, there's not very much of it here. But he does say this. In fact, I mean, he is. Yeah, I'll get to that in a bit. You know, he is a professor in England, but he does say this. This book has been written by an intellectual jackdaw, let loose in large libraries. The debts to the scholarship of others are immense, but the format of the series precluded the attributions to those whose work it draws on. And then something I've not come across before. If you have, I'd be interested to know, how frequent. Statistical tables and appendices not included in this publication because of their bulk may be consulted at the author's website, www.markgreengrass.co.uk. So yeah, might want to check that out. That's that. So, yeah, how to find something meaningful to say that isn't overawed by a mountain of history. Well, this book, not unreasonably, can be described as a bit of a Shangri-La, a bit of a historical Shangri-La, that in between the details of history, I mean, that's a typical page. You can see that. Yeah. There's plenty of it. Anyway, in between the details of history that sort of kind of rears and withdraws into focus time and time again, page after page, we find that it also has time for a coffee and a darn good talk about history as well. It does have narrative pace, and yet takes it all in its stride, something the reader will inevitably notice sooner or later, and therein realise a whole other level of things to appreciate. It would appear that Professor Greengrass adjusted his the theme of the book, which is fairly self-explanatory from the title of the book. So. Yeah, plus the blurb on the back. But nonetheless, books from the Penguin History of Europe series appear in reading lists for university history courses. Yale, a notable referent, curiously enough, despite the lack of footnotes, endnotes, and sources. And this. But with respect to university courses, surely this volume ought to be no exception. I don't know, but that would be my guess. We ought not to be overly surprised, at least. I suppose. Emeritus professor in history faculties have probably lived their entire working career steeped in history. Who better to deploy a lifetime of experience and knowledge and know-how? And teaching involves communicating, hopefully without sending us all to sleep. And the good ones, which is probably most of them, in fact, are well versed in this area of the professor's skill set. An emeritus professor, Greengrass, seems like an all-round maestro, at least to me. You might say he has an advantage with respect of the time period in question, since, of course, history in the 1500s, among other things, involves a history of change that is heading inexorably towards the momentous first half of the 1600s, which includes not only the 30 Years' War, but questions of hegemony and climactic portentum, you might say. He refers to such gems as the habits of thought of the period, and, for example, asks the question with respect to the fact that Italy did not have a Protestant Reformation. Was it because it was too timid, polite, and aristocratic? Was there a failure of leadership or of ideology? Dynasticism, which I mentioned in a very recent video, quote, obeyed the logic of genealogy. It was a perpetual force for instability and warfare, however. It destroyed the possibilities for cooperation around an ideal, and it disregarded local cultural identities. At the same time, religious divisions compromised rulers by making them a party to the conflict on one side or another. They strained the mutual obligations and the trust between rulers and people, and each generation had to discover afresh the dangerous simplicities of believing that the imposition of religious conformity would be a straightforward solution to the problem of religious dissent. It follows that the division forged by Reformation and Counter-Reformation forces began to politicise increasing numbers of people, and this in turn legitimated people's, quote, willingness to hold those in power to account for their actions, close quote. And yet again, there is a will to power and conformity, to dominate, to have your way. It is even part of human nature, more or less. And we discover that Martin Luther said that the Word did it all. And in a discussion about politics and reason of state, Machiavelli and Botero, apparently everything was founded in the obedience of subjects, and which could only be assured by princely virtue. That virtue was achieved through the science of statecraft, which involved moral and political philosophy, geometry and architecture, and above all, history, which taught the rules of prudence. All of which, the statecraft, philosophy, virtue and prudence, no doubt would be worked out off stage, so to speak. And a further macro issue, or meta-history, is whether Europe's northwest Atlantic seaboard was predestined to be a locomotive to modernity. It is hard not to read the script backwards, yet the history of Europe's economy in this period is a reminder of the misconceptions that result when the past is telescoped by seeking the earliest genesis of future success. It's a 5-star read, as they say. I thoroughly recommend it, and I will be reading the next one in the series for Historathon 2025. So that's it, and bye for now.